Welcome to Africa channel. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to help us.
Gunther's Ugly Mule rewrites the hot rod Porsche 911 rules, even for $1 million. Meet the latest and greatest from the mad scientists at Gunther Werks, the Orange County, California-based hardcore Porsche 911 remanufacturer. This car is colloquially called the Gunther Werks Turbo, properly known as the Porsche 993 Turbo remastered by Gunther Werks. It's known internally as Project Tornado, but to you and me, and especially Gunther's CEO, it's the Ugly Mule. Like all Gunther Werks vehicles so far, the Turbo begins life as a 993 generation Porsche 911 coupe. From there, the company performs enough surgery on the car to supposedly justify a $950,000 base price. Naturally, that's before any sort of customization, and you know each Gunther Werks Turbo will sport some sort of bespoke something. About $350,000 worth of something on average, as it turns out. Hey, why not? On first blush that sure sounds like a silly amount of money for an old Porsche, until you realize Gunther Werks will only build 75 customer examples, and every single one of them is of course already spoken for. After living with the development mule for a week, I'm here to tell you Gunther Werks could have charged more and sold double that amount. Yes, the car is that good. The car pictured here is one of the two Gunther Werks Turbo mules built so far. If you're into the hot rod Porsche scene, you've no doubt clocked the pretty mule, aka the Tornado Orange show car that sat front and center on Gunther Werks' stand at last year's The Quail Gathering during Monterey Car Week. This is not that car. No, this one is the Ugly Mule, the development car pro Porsche racer Patrick Long used when he smashed the WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca hill climb record with a time of 34.2 seconds, beating everything on earth including Mario Andretti's old Lotus Formula 1 car. Unlike the pretty version, Ugly here is wrapped in what looks like a shredded hefty bag. Yards of exposed wires hang out behind the non-standard Recaro seats, and Gunther Werks hasn't even bothered installing the carbon fiber roof. Yes, this one still has a non-operational sunroof. Yet it doesn't have a handbrake, or a fuel gauge, or a heater. We call it the Ugly Mule, Gunther Werks CEO Peter Nahm says in my driveway as he drops the Turbo off early on a Tuesday morning. The body panels are just bolted on, they're not even bonded, underlining the point that, aesthetically, Ugly Mule is not up to Gunther Werks' usual spec. If you've ever examined a production Gunther Werks vehicle, you know the company's attention to detail is the best in the business. This mule is not up to Nahm's perfectionist, borderline OCD spec. He even politely asks that I not take any photographs of it. I look at him like he's crazy. To be fair, this mule isn't even running the proper body panels, so I, sort of, understand his trepidation. The engine is of course the heart of the Gunther Werks Turbo. It begins life as a Gamroth-developed 4.0-liter twin-turbo, air-cooled, liquid-to-air intercooled Boxer 6 Gunther Werks modified to make at least 750 horsepower and 600 pounds-to-foot of torque. Drivers will be able to switch between power levels of 550, 650, and 750 plus HP, and that final number might be higher when the company delivers the first customer car later this year, most likely in Q4. Visually, the power plant is fantastic, a racy mix of aluminum, magnesium, and carbon fiber. The star of the Flat 6 show is the bronzed, top-mounted flat fan that harks back to both the Porsche 917 and 935 race car motors. Then there are the eye-catching anodized intercooler covers, which can be gold-plated if so desired, naturally. They're more effective but unnecessary in 24-karat gold. Also, you'll find individual throttle bodies and a 7,500 revolutions per minute redline. The exhaust consists of Akrapovic pipes capped off with 3D printed Inconel tips. The gearbox is a Getrag G96 6-speed with custom gear ratios, a mid-weight flywheel, multiplate clutch, and a carbon clutch differential that features 40% locking. Then there's the aero. Up front you notice a medium-size air extractor cut into the hood. A large, low-mounted central intake below the nose feeds a nearly horizontal radiator, and the wasted air blows out of the extractor, over the windshield and roof before hitting the massive, stacked wing. Testing revealed the wing wasn't actually high enough, so the Gunthers added a gurney flap onto its highest point. The underbody aero pieces are also part of the downforce formula, and even the side skirts help. Gunther Werks doesn't have an official number for how much downforce the body panels produce, but here's what it feels like. Drop the proverbial hammer on the sub 2,700-pound beastie, and the turbo feels like it's going to pop a wheelie. Part of that is the typical butt-heavy, light nose feeling you get under rapid acceleration in any quick 911. But part of that is the fact the Gunther Turbo makes nearly twice as much torque per pound as a Chevrolet Corvette Z06. Then, suddenly, the aero kicks in at around 50 miles per hour, and the front end is sucked down to the tarmac. Fantastic. Works around corners, too. Speaking of corners, the turbo rides on eye-catchingly fat rubber, 295 30/18-inch tires up front and 335 30/18s in back. Gunther Werks Spec Continental Extreme Contact Sport 02S wraparound, optional, carbon fiber barrel/magnesium spoke demag wheels. Stopping duties are handled by Brembo GT brakes, with 6-piston calipers clamping 14.0-inch front discs and 13.5-inch rears. Carbon ceramic rotors are optional. The suspension is the typical Gunther Werks 993 generation Porsche 911 formula. The front track is widened to the factory racing spec and held in place by custom uprights. The anti-roll bars are custom and built by Eisenlohr Racing. Damping is assigned to a Trick JRZ electric coilover system, and compression and rebound are all multi-way adjustable. The 993 chassis is reinforced, and there's a front strut brace and a standard front end lift system. Make sure you get some heat in the tires, racer and Luftgekkult co-founder Pat Long tells me via text. I was getting wheel spin in second gear. Good to know. Long is helping Gunther with its car setup, and he also says how much further along in development it is when compared to the previous two GW products, the Coupe and the Speedster. While I've driven cars with much more power, for some reason I'm nervous about pushing the Turbo Mule. My initial destination is Angeles Crest Highway, the 63-mile gem of a jewel that's 10 minutes from my front door and is legit one of the world's greatest canyon roads. I've driven the crest in a couple of Bugattis that pack more than twice the power of this matte-wrapped Gunther, but I've psyched myself out. Gunther Werks' previous vehicles have typically ridden rather rough, so I'm surprised by how relatively decent the turbo feels in comfort mode driving along the freeway. It's basically a stripped-out race car, but a pleasant enough riding one. With tires warmed and dampers set to sport mode, I'm instantly enthralled with the engine's prodigious torque. There's just so much of it, and it's so constant. Quite unlike an actual 993 911 turbo, the thrust comes on in a linear fashion, building evenly the entire time. If it weren't for the voluminous whooshes from the blow-off valves, you would swear the engine is naturally aspirated. The engine revs much quicker than I expected, too. The indicated redline on the digital Motec tachometer is 7,000 revolutions per minute, though I eventually realized the actual redline is 7,500 revolutions per minute. There's no lag, which I suspect is a combination of the engine's large displacement, small turbos, and the magic of throttle-by-wire. The lack of lag is even more impressive considering the route up Angeles Crest runs to over 1 mile high. To preserve Gunther turbo drivers' lives, the production GW turbos will probably have their torque outputs limited in first and second gear. Lucky for me, no such limits here. More on that shortly. Next, I test the brakes a bit, slamming them hard a few times in a row just to get a feel for how well, or not, this car slows. I'm lucky again, as the stopping power is both superlative and repeatable. It's wildly impressive, really. Now it's time to start probing the turbo's canyon performance. After a few corners, I'm having an internal debate about which is better, the turbo's hypercar power or the way it steers. I give my nod to the latter, as it's almost intuitive. Gunther Werks has done another masterful job on the turbo's front end. Your slightest input sends the car precisely where your eyes want it to go. The hydraulic, steering is as close to a race car's as anything I've driven on the road. There's no understeer to speak of, and it has just a seemingly endless amount of bite and grip. There's even a chance the chassis stiffening carbon fiber roof coming to the production cars will improve it further, which I can't even comprehend. Which raises a question: how representative is this prototype mule of the 75 cars the rich folks will get? According to NOM, it's dead on in terms of performance and handling. Those lucky, moneyed bastards. Still, there will be a couple of changes in addition to the carbon roof. For one, ugly-mule has a pair of Recaro racing seats that are simply bolted to the floor. Production turbos will have GW's regular hollow-formed carbon fiber buckets, and both driver and passenger will sit about an inch higher. The only part of the Turbo Mule I found lacking was the gearbox. It's not bad by any means, but it's also not as surgically precise as the rest of the vehicle. Put another way, you can find a better 6-speed manual gearbox in a run-of-the-mill Porsche 911 GT3. A birdie told me the Ugly Mule's Getrag box broke during testing and that Gunther Werks subbed in a unit from a regular GT3. Obviously, the Porsche transmission was never supposed to handle power levels like this turbo develops, so it had some issues coping with it all. But I have zero doubt Gunther will sort out the gearbox by the time the turbo enters production. In terms of outright performance, one of the most impressive Porsche 911s I've driven is the 991.2 GT2 RS. A near magical track tool that held the Laguna Seca production car lap record until it was dethroned by the $1 million McLaren Senna, and only by half a second. It claimed many other production car records around the world, too. To give you an idea of how extreme the Gunther Werks turbo is, the GT2 RS in question produces 691 horsepower and 553 pounds-to-foot of torque, and it weighs 3,355 pounds. Quick math means the turbo makes 59 more HP and 47 more pound-to-foot of twist yet weighs more than 600 pounds less. That's 4.9 pounds per pony for the GT2 RS versus 3.7 pounds per horsepower for the GW. And the mule's power output will likely rise. Porsche never built a 993 911 GT2 RS, though there was the rarer-than-unicorn spit GT2 Evo. 11 examples were built, which was a homologated GT2 race car, and that car still can't hang with ugly-mule in terms of sheer gumption. 4.0 pounds per horsepower versus the Gunther Werks 3.7. The ugly-mule is simply wicked. The crazy part is that the engine isn't the best part. The steering is. My friend Misha Mansour, metal guitar god in the band Periphery and supercar collector, after only a few short miles cried out, "Why can't all cars steer like this? Why can't they, indeed?" Combine the grip, the poise, and the steering precision with the fact the turbo makes giant, streetable downforce, and you've got one of the best driving cars, well, ever. Best driving? I mean, we're in that realm here. Comparables? Singer? Never driven one. Workshop 5001? Possibly, as a turbocharged car is coming. The McLaren 720S/765S jumps to mind, with similar power, torque, and weight, actually. But the ugly-mule has a manual transmission, sounds roughly 90 times better, and is much more fun to drive. In terms of racy production Porsches, it has the overall race car feel of the 997.2 GT3 RS 4.0, but with an atomic bomb shoved up its ass. To put it in a more family-friendly manner, the Gunther Werks turbo drives like a street-legal Porsche 935. You know, the one that won Le Mans in 1979.
We have come to the end of the video. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel to help us.